So today we're out on the R1200RT. 12 degrees, quite breezy today, and quite cool in that breeze. It's a bit of a horn warning for the cyclists, just to let them know I'm there. So as I say, we're out on the R1200RT today. I've had this bike now for about 6 years, which is most unusual for me to keep a bike this long. But there's something about this bike that I just love riding. And I've had two previous R1200RTs being single cam versions, and this one is the twin cam. And I just took to this straight away. The others were good, but I just prefer the way this engine does things. And the bike has done 52,000 miles now, near as damn it, and I've done about 42,000 of those. And the bike has been great most of that time. There's had very few things I've needed to attend to. I've had to change the brakes, that's just wear and tear. Had a leaking seal on the back of the engine done by BMW. It's had its routine servicing, it's had some new switchgear fitted on the left handlebar, but generally speaking, it's a pretty good bit of kit. And for a full touring bike, she's light, 265 kilos or thereabouts wet, compared to some which are sort of getting up to or over 300 kilos, which is a lot of weight. And I know that when you're riding, generally speaking, the weight just melts away, but not so much so when you're trying to move it around in your shed or a parking space. So 110 brake horsepower, not phenomenally fast, but certainly fast enough for everyday use and for enjoyment. And I don't need it to be ridiculously powerful. It's absolutely adequate for what I need. If you want it to go, it will. And if you want to ride around slowly, and bearing in mind I use this bike predominantly for work, and a lot of that work has included compulsory basic training, sometimes even people on mopeds, where you need to spend a few hours out and about at less than 30 miles an hour. This bike is competent to do it all. It doesn't feel like it wants to push you forward all the time when you want it to be slow. And generally speaking, it doesn't ever feel that it's going to let you down when you want it to get on with it. So it's a very nice balance. I know the later R1200 and the 1250RT have more power and are quicker, but quite frankly, I don't feel the need to spend the extra money and to get one of those at the moment. This is a great all-rounder. It's got good weather protection, maybe not as good as the previous 1100 and 1150s, but it's still good. It keeps a degree of the wet off of you, and it certainly makes it a relatively more comfortable place to be when the temperature's very low. And sometimes you don't appreciate that until you jump on a bike with a tiny fairing or no fairing afterwards, and you think, crikey, I really have been spoiled. It's got quite a good level of equipment as well, and whilst it's not got all the latest bells and whistles that a lot of motorcycles do have, the more modern ones, it's got enough for what I want, and I don't like too much in the way of equipment. So we haven't got any rider modes or anything like that to worry about, which is absolutely fine. We've got cruise control, which I don't use very often, but it's nice if you've got a lot of motorway work to do. It's got heated seats, 2 positions, and the same for the heated grips, and they do get quite nice and warm and toasty. Got an onboard computer showing temperature, tyre pressures in live time, front and rear, and things like your fuel range, your miles per gallon, average, things like that. You can adjust the headlight aim up and down with the little wheel there on the dashboard, which the previous 1200s didn't have. That came in with the twin cam engine. We've got anti-lock brakes naturally, and combined with that system is what BMW call their automatic stability control. We've got an electric screen as well. It's currently at full, and if we drop that screen down, we get more wind on us, which is lovely in the summer on hot days. Also get a little bit more wind noise. In fact, the noise sort of varies. It's more high pitched when low down, and a bit more of a rumble as it goes up. Some people sit behind the screen quite comfortably. We've got a two-position seat, and that can change the way that you sit in relation to the screen height. So I sit on the highest position, and it's a little bit quieter if I tuck down or sit on the lower seat position, but I prefer sitting high up. It's better for my legs and my back. Now, this bike was also fitted with the electronic suspension adjustment, and I say was, I sent it away for refurbishing, and I put some manual shocks on from a police motorcycle, and I quite like them, so I've left them because I'm not changing my suspension all day every day anyway. And the rear shock is adjustable for preload on the manual setup, but the spring has a softer damping rate than the ESA, and for me, for my bones and my back, it's just a bit nicer on the road. I just prefer it. The ESA gave you the option of comfort, normal and sport, but I found even in comfort, I wouldn't say it was choppy. I'm just very hypersensitive to things being bounced around on the road, and I just prefer this level of comfort. The electronic system also adjusts the preload at the touch of a button between single rider, rider and luggage, and rider and pillion. So it's very, very useful. If you are going to go touring and change the loading on the bike, it's a great system. The only thing is, as with all suspension, particularly some of the cheaper units maybe, they tend to wear out and get a little bit soft and saggy, and it's quite difficult to work that out sometimes until you actually have them tested, because it's very progressive. You can't just turn the clock back to how the bike felt 5 years ago and say, oh yeah, that's really changed, because it just sort of creeps up on you. But you do notice if you have them refurbished and changed, you think, oh yeah, there's a big difference here. So one thing I really like about these R1200RTs, and it was really noticeable the first time I rode one, having ridden a number of older BMWs, which is still nice of course, is the handling. And a lot of people have said to me, that's a big bike, oh that's a handful. It might look it, but a lot of it's just plastic, and in fact the handling on this really belies the construction of it. It is so intuitive when it comes to cornering. It's an absolute breeze. Even at low speed work, it's very, very easy to ride. I can't say it would suit every rider, especially if they're a newer and experienced rider. I often get asked that question, you know, is this bike too much for a new rider? It's very subjective depending on the rider's ability, the level of training and level of confidence. But is it an intimidating, difficult bike to ride? No, I don't think it is, providing you have got those motorcycle skills that are essential no matter what bike you ride. You know, if your skills aren't where they should be, you really shouldn't be riding one of these, because if you do get it wrong, it'll bite you. The other thing with these, the newer BMWs don't have, is the dry clutch. Now, BMWs have had dry clutches on their boxer engines since time began, if I recall correctly. And when we're training new students and we're teaching clutch slip, when it comes to slow speed handling and things like that, you wouldn't want to be slipping the clutch on one of these massively for protracted periods of time with high revs, which very often is what new riders have to do to get the skill level up, because you'd burn your clutch out. It's the same as a car clutch. But once you get it more experienced and you get used to the machines, you can use the clutches to achieve those slow speed control techniques very capably. You might get the odd little whiff of clutch if you overdo it, but provided you don't go mad, you're not going to upset the bike. And of course, police forces all over the world have used these bikes for years, so the clutches are fairly resilient. You just can't go mad on them. Okay, the other thing that's really good about these boxer engines is they've got fantastic engine braking. And the only thing you have to bear in mind there is, once you get used to them, if you have got a vehicle fairly close behind you, do you need to show a brake light to warn people that you're slowing down? But I can ride from home to work and very often not even use the brakes, because it'll all just work on engine braking and planning, which is, it's really nice. It's a nice comfortable way to ride. The power delivery is very controllable on these. Riding position is nice. It's got a very slight forward lean, but nothing of any real note. Traction more so than perhaps the earlier touring bikes, like the Airhead R100RT and R80RT. And I'd probably say the 1100 and 1150RT was slightly more upright than this. This just has a very gentle forward lean, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's just nice. I did experiment with bar risers and I thought, oh, this has cracked it, I like this. But after a while I realised that being completely upright perhaps wasn't the best for my spine, because if you do get little lumps and bumps that transmit through the suspension onto the saddle, it goes straight up your spine. Whereas with a bit of forward lean, you can use your knees to take away some of that sting. So let's go out into the countryside and have a little look around, see what's going on. So we're between Chilham and Wye. And there's some really nice roads around here. I know them quite well. Used to spend a lot of time around these roads back in the early 90s when I used to work around here. And it's just lovely, basically. A very nice rural area. A little bit of gravel there, need to be careful. That's the only thing with these country roads, isn't it? We get gravel all over the place. If we start flying round bends, we're going to find tyres going sideways. Of course, we've not got a great view of the road ahead and we can't see through the hedges, so we have to assume someone's going to come flying around that bend and cause us a problem. And that's what I like about this bike. You know, we're doing 20, 25, 30 miles an hour on some roads just for safety. It's comfortable. I don't feel like I'm missing out. You know, whilst the bike is physically capable of going round these bends a lot quicker, and I can go round these bends a lot quicker, it's whether you can stop in the distance you can see to be clear, because the last thing you want is to go around a bend too fast and hit the vehicle coming towards you that you haven't seen till the last minute. It's not good for motorcycling. It's like here, Brower Hill, road disappearing, I can't see what's coming. I've only got to have someone coming towards me at 50 mile an hour on the phone, and they're quite a danger to me. But that's the lovely thing about the RT. We're very comfortable, we're all planted. It's just a nice experience. A lot of people often ask the question, should I have an RT or should I have a GS? Personal preference really. I've had the GS, really enjoyed it a lot of the time. I find the RT a fraction more comfortable. I didn't like the saddle on the GS. It just pushes you forward slightly towards the tank, which can create a bit of discomfort. I don't get that on the RT. But then I've heard reports of people who say the standard saddle on the RT is horribly uncomfortable and they've replaced it. I've never felt the need. We're all different. Makes the world go round. Of course, you generally sit higher on a GS, even though you can get them lowered. Yeah, the GS is fun. It shares the same engine with the RTs, although it has a different ratio gearbox and it gives it a very different feel in my mind. I'd always find myself, or often find myself, in a different gear for the same circumstances on the GS that I would to the RT. So for example, now I could be in second on the GS, possibly. I'm in first on the RT. Just gives me that extra little bit more flexibility. A bit of warning of a horse on the road there. Don't know if it's fresh or been my way or going the other way. So I'm going to have a first gear here, just for flexibility on the hill. Quite a bit of gravel about. I mean, these sort of roads are ideally suited to GS's. Perhaps you sit a little bit higher sometimes, see a little bit more. Not to make a lot of difference to me today, quite frankly. And the real key to it is tyres. You know, people say this isn't an off-roading or a green laning bike. Well, no, it's not, but then neither's a GS with road tyres. And if it does fall over, there's a lot of weight to pick up. Lovely view across there. The wheel part of Kent is really nice. Got another superb view there. So we're now round the back of a place called Crundale, heading in the direction of Y. So, with my RT, just thinking, apart from those couple of little issues with the seal at the back of the engine and a new switchgear on the left, this thing's just had routine servicing, a couple of sets of brake pads and one recent replacement of brake discs. You hear lots of issues with some of the more modern bikes. I mean, these weren't without, you know, final drives. Often went wrong on these. Fuel pump controllers on the earlier ones used to fail, and the fuel strips that served the petrol gauge on the earlier ones were an absolute nightmare for failures. From about September 2010 on, they changed and put a fuel float on, the more traditional float, which is what this bike, being a 2013, has got, and that's made a hell of a difference. Right, let's tuck in a little bit. Foot up on the bank there for that one. Names such as Brook, Hastingly, Y. This is a lovely long straight as we head towards Y then. Cracking view down to the end. The other thing I like about this bike, and whether it's just because I've got used to it after 6 years of riding, keeping to speed limits. Generally speaking, it's really easy. It just feels right, you know, 30 in third here, easy to keep it on the money. And then for acceleration, in third gear, off we go. And I'm not going to cane it, I don't need to cane it, but it's a very relaxed experience. Very easy bike to ride around, this one. As we said before, the handling is absolutely superb. It makes bends real fun, even on these little roads. There's no intimidation whatsoever. Let's knock a bit of that speed off for those pedestrians. let's head for Brabourne and Stouting. So we're bypassing Brook. Just losing the view of the road a little bit here, so we're going to just ease off a little bit. We've got that classic rubbish in the middle of the road, which is well slippery. That's why you've got to keep your speed fairly low, because I couldn't go into the left there, not with all that debris on the road. Even with ABS and traction control, the wheels are going to want to slide, even if they're going to be helped by the electronic aids. They're still going to be fighting horribly for grip, and the bike could easily tip. So I always like to ride the bike in a way that it hasn't got any electronic aids. And then if I have got things slightly wrong, they're going to help me, rather than me just expecting them to do all the work. I was hoping to get a little bit more sunshine today than we've actually had. But it's nice that it's dry and not too cold. Let's find the wide part of the road, that'll do me. So much easier than driving a car, isn't it? Tuck yourself into the bank, stick your foot on the bank, you're right out the way. Happy days. Right, let's have a little spin round here and go towards Hastingly and Waltham. This is a bit of a turn. That's where your slow speed control technique is so important. A tight left where the road's pointing to the right and up a hill. If you're not good with those controls, that's a nasty bit of work. Third gear on this bike is so flexible. I mean, okay, I'm running at 3,500 revs at the moment, but it's great because if you can accelerate away as the view opens up and as the view drops, you can just close it down, and as the view comes back in, you can power it on again. Very, very flexible. Just ease off for the crossroads a little bit. Bodsham and Elmstead on the right, with Hassel Street to the left. Let's go back to my third gear for this one. There we go. And as the view opens up, off we go. Would have done it in fourth, of course. It's got loads of pull in fourth. I just try and keep myself in tune with using the gears. It's very easy to get lazy. I don't want to get lazy. And I like to keep these boxer engines bubbling away. You just get a real sense of satisfaction of hitting the sweet spot on them. So like now I have a little third. And of course the great thing is, by using a slightly lower gear, lots of engine braking when we need it. Plenty of acceleration when we need it. I'm not going to go accelerating hard now with a cyclist, but keep it pleasant. There's the R1200RT SE there, in Alpine white. Not an ex-police bike, it's just fitted with slim panniers and a radio hump just because it's easier for my work. But yeah, a lovely machine, a very capable machine. It's got the additional crash bars on it as well, just in case it was to ever go over. Hopefully it won't.